Wisconsin's Canning Country, home of the Wisconsin and Southern Railroad. They operate in Horicon, the Oshkosh subdivision, the Markesan line, and the Cambria subdivision. The Cambria subdivision has places like Cambria, Randolph, and Beaver Dam and Fox Lake. These are the Milwaukee Road frying pans of the Wisconsin Canning Country. For the original people on my channel, you all probably know that I was born and raised in Beaver Dam. It is operated by the Wisconsin and Southern and lies on the Cambria subdivision, which was built by the La Crosse and Milwaukee Railroad in 1855. The LC&M was also an early ancestor of the Milwaukee Road. They included stops throughout the Wisconsin drumlin prairies, but most of the depots were built by the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul later on, such as Horicon, Hartford, Randolph, Cambria, Beaver Dam, and Fox Lake. Beaver Dam, founded in 1841, had the LC&M reach Beatty in 1856, and for a while they stopped there, while another Milwaukee ancestor named the Beaver Dam and Baraboo Railroad planned to make the existing LC&M line go south towards Baraboo, Wisconsin. But then the project was abandoned due to a more favorable option to develop northwest instead of southwestward, which would get them to the west side of Wisconsin faster. The BD and B line was never constructed except for a grade that was left behind towards South Beaver Dam, along with a section of right-of-way that went through the middle of the town. In 1882, Beaver Dam had a growing manufacturing demand, which was basically gold lying on the Milwaukee's front yard. So in 1882, the Milwaukee used a section of the BD&B's right-of-way to build a loop that went into the heart of the town. And in that same year, the Beaver Dam Depot was constructed along with two freight houses and a bridge that crossed the Beaver Dam River in the middle of the town. The depot, built in 1900, was constructed out of brick by the architectural partnership Frost & Granger. It is in a cottage-esque Victorian architectural style, and then following the line north, we arrive in Fox Lake, Wisconsin, where another small town is growing. Founded in 1838, Fox Lake will have another loop that will hold a depot. The depot was built in 1884 and mainly served people going in and out of the nearby resorts along Fox Lake, with daily service running between Milwaukee and western Wisconsin. But then in 1876, the Milwaukee and Mississippi finished their Watertown and Tomah subdivisions, which were faster routes between Milwaukee, Chicago, and the Twin Cities. Consequently, the Cambria subdivision only received the local passenger train that would run from Portage, Wisconsin to Horicon, Wisconsin, and then to Milwaukee. Later on in 1919, the depot in Fox Lake received a porte cochere, which was basically a covered entrance for horses and carriages and the like. Now back to Beaver Dam. Some of the first industries to receive service on the frying pan were some mills and manufacturing companies, such as the J.S. Rowell Manufacturing Co., which manufactured agricultural equipment such as seed drills and cultivators, most famously known for their Tiger grain drill. They were a major motivator for the development of the frying pan, so thank you, J.S. Rowell. And many grist and flour mills like Mayer's Seed and Feed, which had a towering mill by the Y of the frying pan. And then the large malleable iron range company, founded in 1896, moved from St. Louis, Missouri to Beaver Dam, Wisconsin. They produced world-renowned cast iron stoves, refrigerators, and kitchen ranges under their Monarch name. And with the Monarch coming to Beaver Dam, the Beaver Dam Malleable Iron Works came in to supply the Monarch with castings for the stoves. North of the Monarch range was the Weyenberg Shoe Manufacturing Company, which relied on the railroad to bring in tanned leather and to ship out finished shoes. What about Fox Lake? Well, they had their own fair share of flour mills, along with ice houses, which would provide ice blocks for refrigeration before modern refrigerators would exist. A fun fact is that both of these loops were served by Milwaukee road locals known as patrols. And post-war, more food processors began entering the Beaver Dam scene, such as Green Giant, which shipped canned corn and peas, Kraft Foods, which produced dairy products like cheese, along with Felco, which wasn't a food processor but a regional farming co-op that entered around the same time. Here's an aerial image of the loop in 1956, and you can even see a Milwaukee train crossing the river. During the mid to late 1900s, the Milwaukee were suffering several financial hardships like bankruptcies. This negatively affected both loops, and on March 22, 1958, the last Milwaukee passenger train passed through the frying pans. The last passenger train was led by Milwaukee Road Unit number 5900. Even though passenger service ended, freight service continued throughout the 50s and 60s. In 1970, another blow happened to the frying pans. The Milwaukee Road terminated freight service on the Fox Lake Loop. The reason for this is vague and there's little information covering the Fox Lake Loop, but if I had to say one reason, it was probably to remove an unprofitable line. Beaver Dam continued operating despite being in a very poor time with the Milwaukee Road. The Milwaukee Road began suffering its fourth and final bankruptcy. In 1980, many tracks in southern Wisconsin, including the Cambria subdivision, which was now stripped of its Cambria Portage section, and the Frying Pan, had been abandoned when the state of Wisconsin stepped in to save these lands that they deemed profitable. The state then contracted the newly formed Wisconsin and Southern Railroad to operate these lines, including the Frying Pan. And on July 1st, they had reserved the rights to these lines for operations. During the 1980s, the Frying Pan was in a state of terminal decline as the once bustling and major Monarch Range was now suffering its own difficulties, including a bankruptcy due to labor tensions and tightening regulations from the EPA, when ultimately they closed their doors for good in 1985, which made the Frying Pan situation worse by losing their once most profitable customer. In 1989, the conditions such as the deteriorating track bed on the Frying Pan had gotten so bad that the original speed limit had lowered from 5 to 10 miles per hour to 3 to 4 miles per hour, with several tracks designated out of service. And then, in 1990, the Wisconsin and Southern officially abandoned the Frying Pan due to a lack of customers and decay in track quality. By now, 95% of all original customers had either moved or shifted to trucking. The Monarch Range was left abandoned when, in 1986, an inspection of the Monarch brownfield discovered 500 barrels of toxic and hazardous waste, including asbestos, 65,000 gallons of dangerous materials, including paint thinners, stripper wastes, electroplating solutions, lab chemicals, porcelain enamel wastes with high concentrations of heavy metals, and several assorted barrels of unlisted content. Keep in mind that right across the street from the Monarch Range was a neighborhood. And to make it worse, in 1990, an arsonist set fire to one of the remaining structures, which prompted a very expensive firefighting effort, and afterwards, every structure on the property had been razed. Back to Wisconsin and Southern, they continued to run patrols on the Cambria subdivision, serving several small industries, most notably Del Monte, and everyone's favorite company, Didion. But hold on, where did all the industries on the Frying Pan go? Well, the freight house at the Y was razed. The other freight house was sold as a real estate to a coffee shop, then to Remax Prime, and then recently was sold to another coffee shop that wants to preserve its railroad heritage by restoring the original interior. The bridge was removed following the abandonment of the line. The original site of the J.S. Rowell Manufacturing Company was redeveloped and is occupied by a few small buildings and a parking lot owned by the community library. Mayor's Seed and Feed was involuntarily dissolved in 1985 following circumstances similar to that of the Monarch Range and a devastating fire in October of 1980. The mill still stands and was in a rusty bare metal look and was even called a fire hazard, in which it was almost torn down. But in the mid-2010s, it was repainted and finished in a beige color. You can also see a curve on the structure where the Y once passed it. The Monarch Range and their ironworks were both fully razed and the soil was removed due to contamination. Today, the site is now occupied by a grocery store called Rechecks and a small strip mall that was built in 1995. The Weyenberg Shoe Company closed in 1986 due to global competition, but the building still stands repurposed as an apartment building called the Shoe Factory Apartments as an ode to what once operated inside their walls. Green Giant moved their plant to the new spurs that the Milwaukee had built on the north side of the town. Their original building, on the other hand, was sold to a private owner who rents out storage, but in 2015 the building caught fire, which resulted in the roof being removed. Kraft Foods still exists, but they transferred to trucking instead of rail service. Felco left Beaver Dam shortly after the Frying Pan lost rail service. Their property then was sold to Kraft Foods for redevelopment as a parking lot for trailers. Libby, McNeil & Libby was a canning company that had a large complex on the interior of the Fox Lake Loop, but they eventually closed their doors in the late 50s. The building was acquired by the Coopery and DeYoung Storage Corporation, which would do storage and logistics work. They actually utilized the remaining rail service until the tracks were pulled in 1970. The building still remains today, and you can even see the old boxcar ports on the side of the building. The Fox Lake Loop is also a trail, and it is very easily seen from satellite images. The depots both still stand. The Fox Lake Depot is owned by the Fox Lake Historical Museum and has a section of track and an original 45-degree Milwaukee crossbuck preserve. The Beaver Dam Depot still stands and is now the Chamber of Commerce for the city of Beaver Dam. The station platform and a section of track were preserved, and a Milwaukee Road caboose also stands on that track to pay homage to the railroad that helped build the town over 100 years ago. Today, Wisconsin and Southern still operates in the Canning Country, and despite the loops no longer existing, they serve their purpose of transporting people, building industries, towns, and a railroad, and have truly earned their place in both the history of the Milwaukee Road and the Canning Country of Wisconsin. Thank you for watching. Like if you enjoyed the video, dislike if you didn't, and have a good afternoon.